Okay, so this last section is going to put it all together in some ways. Now that you've learned a lot about conflict, so what? And notice here it says conflict management in in practice. Okay, so it's not just theoretical. All right, so let's see what the steps, six, seven steps. All right. Alrighty. So first one is to define your needs. This you do on your own. You spend some time thinking about what's bothering me about this conflict, how would I like it to be resolved. Uh, you know, you might write stuff down. You might talk to yourself. You might find someone who's not involved in the conflict who would respect your confidence and talk it out with them. But whatever you need to do, you need to, figure out what it is that's important for you. And then you have to share your needs. Okay. Obviously, you're not going to spring this on someone, the two of you are driving to a concert. That might not be the best time to bring up the fact that you think the other person's spending too much money. There's also a very interesting sidebar on page 355 that talks about managing conflict via email and looks at the pros and cons of why in the workplace this might be a good thing to do. For one, it gives people enough time to really think about the message, not to be put on the spot when they're trying to respond. The downside is if it takes a while for the person to come up with a response that they feel is clear and accurate and respectful, the other person might be thinking, well, what's going on? Why is it taking them so long to respond? Okay. But one of the things that is important to know about when you're sharing your needs, remember to use I language, which we talked about in chapter 6. Not you do this and you do this, but I feel in the blank with the emotion, right? This is also from chapter 9. I feel hurt when you come home late every time. I was very angry when you missed my sister's birthday party, whatever it is, because that takes a little bit of pressure off the other person. You're not jumping up and down on their behavior. You're mentioning their behavior, but you're really focusing on how you feel about it. All right. Ideally, they have heard what you had to say. So now step 3 is to listen to the other person's needs. You got to use active listening. How are you going to let them know that you have actually heard what they're saying? My favorite is still paraphrasing. So if I understand you correctly, what you're saying is, words to that effect. Wait, when you said such and such, it seems to me that you were feeling angry about this. Is that right? And then they, gives them a chance to say, yes, that's right, or to clarify, to give you more information. Okay, don't look at that bullet at the bottom. We're going to the column on the right. The two of you, or I guess it could be 3, right? People, or 4, could have a huge conflict. You should generate possible solutions. I don't know if you've ever been involved in a brainstorming activity where basically you think of all possible solutions. You're trying not to say, oh, well, this won't work. Say it, because you never know. Sometimes crazy ideas turn out to be not such crazy ideas after all. Once you've got a bunch of solutions, we have a tendency to say, well, we could do this or this. It's very cut and dried, black and white, either or. And that's not the case. So once the solutions are all on the table, take a look. Will this work? Why would this one work? What are some of the downfalls of this other possible solution? And really, weigh the pros and cons of all the solutions and then choose one that you're going to work on. And once you've chosen that one, you actually have to implement it. So you've decided that when your son, daughter, sister, brother, husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, whoever comes home, you're not going to have a deep conversation for the first 15 minutes. You're going to let that person have a beer, have a cup of coffee, take a shower, whatever it is, let them decompress before, you bring up any issues. Okay. And that when you say, oh, okay, we can do that. Or, whatever the conflict is, you could come up with a couple of solutions. Okay. Have to implement the solution. And I think you have to realize that sometimes the solution is good in theory, and it's going to take a little time to make it work in practice, right? So just because it didn't work well the first time doesn't mean it's not going to work. You might have to tweak it a little bit. And let's say you've tried this solution a couple of times. Is it working? Great. Let's make sure we keep doing it. Is it not working? Okay. Is it just a terrible idea, as I said before, or can we tweak it, as I said before? Because just because you've I'm putting this in air quotes, fixed the problem doesn't mean it's not going to come back in a different way. We have conflicts with people who are important to us, in part because they are important to us. Okay, so just because you've come up with a solution doesn't mean it's always going to work exactly the way that you want it to. If you look on page 357, there's a chart. It's very dense. There's a lot of language there, but they set up what the conflict is, then they go through all of the steps, and they explain what it would look like in practice. Okay, so this is not something that's easy. I'm not saying it's incredibly difficult, but it's not something that you can just 5 minutes, one and done type of a thing. It's going to take a while for you to get comfortable with this, for you to use it effectively, to really implement it. Okay, so for this last section, what are the 7 steps in the conflict management process? Right? And what happens at each step? What are the things to remember about each step? And if you think about a conflict that exists in your life, which of these steps, let's say you've decided you want to do some conflict management, which of these steps do you think is going to be the most difficult for you? And what can you do to make this step easier? Because if it's an important relationship, you want the relationship to continue. You don't want it. I know of some relationships that have fallen apart over, as an outsider, things that I think were pretty silly. Okay, so this is chapter 12, all about conflict, and we'll see all of you when we meet in class.